Hello and welcome to today's movie review. I'm Brendan Anderson from the blog Here's Looking at You Kid, and today we will be reviewing The Great Gatsby. So, I walked into this movie very apprehensively. Like most high school students, I read The Great Gatsby last year, my junior year of high school, for my American literature course. And when I first picked up the book, I immediately fell in love with the language that Fitzgerald used, and his ability to create this world of the 1920s, and the sort of moneyed aristocracy that existed back then, and the excess that they lived to, and also to tell the story of this hopelessly romantic man who rose to power so quickly and then fell from grace at the only thing he really cared about, and that was his love. It was a book that really had a powerful impact, mainly because of the dialogue in that book, but also because of just the language that Fitzgerald used and the story, and it all worked together. Gatsby, to me, is my favorite book I ever read in high school English class, and so I was really excited when I heard about this movie coming out. I know that they hadn't really made a Great Gatsby movie yet. There's a 1920s version, which is now lost to history. There's also a 1940s version where Alan Ladd played Gatsby. And I've heard that that Gatsby version is actually pretty good. Alan Ladd plays a good Gatsby, but the movie suffers from a bad budget. And I've heard of the Redford version, the Robert Redford version as well, but a lot of people say that that one isn't very good, so I don't know if I'll ever watch it. But when I heard about this one coming out, I wasn't really excited about the director. Baz Luhrmann is not my favorite sort of director. The only Baz Luhrmann experience I've had was when I watched Romeo plus Juliet, or Romeo and Juliet, but it's called Romeo plus Juliet on the posters, which I watched in freshman year English because we read that Shakespeare play, and I absolutely hated that film adaptation. So I was going into this a little bit apprehensive about the director, but I loved the cast, and that's what made me really excited about the fact that they were making a Gatsby movie, was the cast that he had gotten for this film. You got Leonardo DiCaprio, you've got Tobey Maguire, Carey Mulligan. They all seem perfect for their roles in this movie. And so I was really excited. But then they moved it off of that nice prime Oscar release date that they had in Christmas, and so I got a little bit worried about that, you know, and then the reviews didn't come out until Monday, and the reviews were awful. So I was going into this with very low expectations. I usually draw the line with the critics. I usually follow critical reviews in a lot of ways. I'm not usually very divergent. If a movie's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes, I usually don't like that movie. But in this case, I have to say I'm going against the grain. A lot of critics really hated this movie. There were some one-star reviews, absolutely appalling, hated the movie. And I have to say, nowhere near deserves 1 star. I very rarely ever give the rating at the beginning of my reviews, but just to show you how I felt about the film, I give Gatsby 3.5 out of 5 stars. Mainly because I was really pleasantly surprised that this thing wasn't the train wreck that I had been led to believe that it was going to be. I thought that this movie was going to be an absolutely awful adaptation. I mean, Baz Luhrmann, I'd heard about, it's just kind of crazy, and it's not very good, it's just like one big music video. It's not really, though. It's a very good adaptation of the Gatsby book. It's not a great adaptation. It's an incredibly flawed adaptation, that's for sure. But it's not a terrible adaptation of the book. They use words directly from the book. In fact, most of the dialogue, I just reread the book last week, and I had a long car ride to Chicago, so I just put the book on tape. And a lot of the dialogue is taken precisely from the book, so it's very close to the book in that respect. They even have like whole sentences of the book coming up on the screen. Some people argue that it might almost be too like attached to the book and not really creating its own movie world. But I think, if anything, the major flaws of the movie don't come from its handling of the plot of the book. I mean, the beginning feels a little rushed, but the end just almost feels a little too long. So it's not from the plot of the book. What it really is it's from the sort of there's too much. It's excessive. And I know that, like, the world of the 20s is supposed to be excessive. But Luhrmann's Gatsby 20s world is almost too excessive. I mean, it's, in some cases, it just feels a bit over the top. And, like, maybe he could have toned it down a little bit. And when he tones it down in the actual movie, it works really, really well. When he goes a little too far and doesn't tone it down, it doesn't work at all. You know, there's like, it really just kind of, it doesn't work very much. But you kind of have to see the movie to understand what I'm talking about here. But the performances are fantastic. Leonardo DiCaprio arguably gives the performance of his career as Gatsby. I mean, it's a movie star performance. It's like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. I mean, he's got a character, the great American character, I mean, the epitome of the American dream, and he nails it, in my opinion. Tobey Maguire is not the best narrator in the world, but his Nick Carraway definitely meets up to expectations and works, I think, really well. Carey Mulligan plays a character, Daisy. She's kind of a little bit underwritten. It's the way she is in the book, too, but she definitely plays a huge, important role, and I think Carey Mulligan pulls it off well enough. The rest of the cast pull off their characters pretty well. The whole movie, I think, as far as from an acting perspective, really works. But it's not really an actor's movie because it's so focused on these crazy cinematographic camera angles and 3D stuff flying at you here and there. And I have to say the 3D was not necessary. There's a lot of talk about this movie being filmed in 3D, and Lerman wanted to prove to everybody that 3D could be used for dramatic movies. He didn't prove it to me at all. In fact, if anything, he proved that the 3D was just, like, useless. I mean, I know that it's, like, supposed to be excessive, and the whole thing's supposed to be sort of over the top, but the 3D just was not necessary. Don't see it in 3D. But, you know, in the end, this movie works on a variety of levels. It does a good job with the book, but it does, like, lose a lot of the subtlety of the book, and sometimes it's just over the top. What I mean by subtlety is, like, this movie, it's not like the book was super subtle about symbolism, but this movie is, like, it's like everything has, like, there's, like, the big symbols in the book. It's like, you are told exactly what those symbols mean. There's no detective work here, no, like, symbol detective, English class teacher sort of stuff. You are told exactly what the green light means, exactly what T.J. Eckleberg's eyes mean, etc. And that kind of loses a little bit of a subtlety and feels a little fake. It's almost like Baz Luhrmann doing a little bit of an English class in the middle of a movie. But, you know, it's a little bit, I mean, it's just a little bit over the top, but it's okay. And I think the movie in general is kind of pegged at a younger audience, almost like high schoolers like myself who read the book. I don't really love movies for high schoolers, so it's not going to appeal to me as much, but in the end, Gatsby, not a terrible movie at all. Not even close to a train wreck. Some parts of this movie I felt were really good. The costume design and even sort of the CGI over-the-top set design was really good. And it was a much more satisfying summer blockbuster than Iron Man 3. And yes, this movie is now a blockbuster. Who would have thought that an adaptation of F. Scott Fitzgerald's novel written back in 1925 that was released to mixed reviews would become a blockbuster? I mean, by the way, the novel was actually released to mixed reviews at the beginning. It's now considered the great American novel, and this movie, which much like the novel was received to very mixed to negative reaction reviews, is definitely making headway at the box office. It earned $51 million, I believe, estimated this weekend, so that's really cool. I would definitely recommend seeing it, although next weekend you're going to want to see Star Trek Into Darkness, and I will be also wanting to see Star Trek Into Darkness, so that will be my next review here. Until then, I'm thinking of making a video blog for that one as well. Until then, I read the blog, brenatthemovies.blogspot.com. It's called Here's Looking at You, Kid. Reviews and articles up on there. I'll be posting some stuff, definitely about Star Trek sort of related things this week, and I'll be getting back here for the Star Trek Into Darkness review. I'm really excited for this movie, guys. So, Great Gatsby, 3.5 out of 5, and no way a train wreck, and Star Trek Into Darkness coming up. I can't wait.